The James Show Podcast.
The Big Beautiful Bill has a lot that you're going to like and a lot that you're not going to like. And, you know, such as the way the sausage is made in D.C., this is what compromises look like. Rarely are you ever going to get a bill that you 100% like or 100% dislike. But in this situation here, I want to ask you, we're going to have another little nuanced conversation. A lot like the conversation we had yesterday about the Golden Dome. I would support a Golden Dome if it was free. I would support a Golden Dome if it was coming out of the existing budget, the $1 trillion budget that our military gets every year. If it's so important that we can't live without it, certainly the first $175 billion, or $125 billion if you want to use the low number, can easily be accommodated by the $1 trillion that we're already spending. Oh, no, you need more money on top of that? Well, now I don't like it because we need to balance the budget. The number one thing that happens in D.C. that affects you and your wallet every single day is inflation. And that comes from they spend more than they take in, so they have to print more. They have to increase the money supply, and your value of all the dollars that you earn goes down. You get a pay cut every time this happens. I don't want you to get another pay cut. Your life is not going to be better if you tolerate pay cuts, no matter what the excuse is. So the reason why groceries are up isn't because of supply chain disruptions from COVID. The reason why the cost of your house is going up is not from, well, we just had some weird things in the lumber industry, or we just need to tweak this regulation over here. No, the primary driver of inflation, the number one thing that affects you and gives you about a 3% pay cut every year, is DC not balancing the budget. This bill doesn't balance the budget. This bill doesn't even break even compared on the existing spending path that we're already on, which was unacceptable and unsustainable. This makes it even worse. Now, overall, that's why I'm going to be against it. But I would like to focus on the stuff that I like first. Because in this discussion that's supposed to be had about the Big Beautiful Bill, the criticism that I'm hearing from so many people is all the stuff that I like about it. I'll give you an example. Jasmine Crockett tweeted about 6 hours ago, the Big Beautiful Bill ain't beautiful, it's BS, except she spelled out the word, which is cool these days. If you're woke, you can cuss now. House Republicans just voted for the largest cut to SNAP and Medicaid in U.S. history. Calm down, hang on, I'm not done yet. Turning their backs on their own damn constituents. The working people they were sent here to represent. They don't serve the people, they serve the rich. Ugh. The only thing she really mentioned there was SNAP and Medicaid. Now, if you're one of the working people, if you have a gainful employment and a career to speak of, you're probably not on SNAP nor Medicaid. I realize some people are. If you're a single mom and you just work 19 hours at a drive-thru, then you still qualify for SNAP and Medicaid. And these benefits and poverty, the experience of poverty in America is almost exclusively concentrated to single-parent households and retired couples who are no longer working. That's like more than 70% of people who live in poverty in America. There's almost no such thing. If you live in a household with two parents and they're both working, none of those people are in poverty. It's almost impossible for you to be in poverty. And in fact, I think the number's under 2% of the people who get these benefits are in a two-parent household where they're both working. But there's other things I like about this that I hear people complaining about. I heard some ladies on CNN saying this is going to gut the Department of Education. Well, already, are you trying to talk me into liking the bill? Because gutting the Department of Education isn't a negative to me. In fact, I think the whole thing should be thrown in the trash. The Department of Education has proven to be a huge, embarrassing waste of money and a failure. And in fact, here's Madeline Dean. Representative Madeline Dean yesterday had the Education Secretary, Linda McMahon, in some sort of congressional hearing and was just saying the worst arguments for it.
Why don't you want to protect kids who have been every decade denied equal access simply because of how much their parents make, the zip code they live in, the color of their skin?
Hang on. So we've had the Department of Education for 50 years now. That's the case? Well, it sounds like the Department of Education has failed. If your education experience is still dependent on your zip code and it's been 50 years, well, then clearly the Department of Education is not the answer. But I'll let you continue, Representative Madeline Dean.
Why are you shuttering a department that's supposed to lift up those children?
But did it? It's supposed to, but did it? What is its record of success? What metric can you look at across our scores, across our standardized testing, across our rankings versus other countries and their students? Maybe the cost. All of that has gotten worse since the Department of Education. So even if it was intended to help, it hasn't. It has hurt. It has made kids dumber and it has made schools more expensive, less effective. So yeah, that's why we oppose it. But go ahead, Representative Dean.
Because those programs don't have to flow through the Department of Education, and they
can flow through the state. I was a state legislator. That's called shift and shaft. I've spoken with the governor of Pennsylvania. They can't pick up the tab.
Oh, see, you can't do that. It has a clever name, shift and shaft. See, and since it has a negative name, we know that's not going to be a better solution. Even though you got better results under what she calls shift and shaft, when all that stuff was just being determined on a state-to-state basis, and there was no Department of Education, and there was less control and less subsidies and less money throwing through D.C. Aimed at education, things were better. Shift and shaft is better than what we have now. So go ahead, call it shift and shaft. The Department of Education is worse than shift and shaft, which sounds like is that a bar on Oak Lawn?
Anymore for education of our students. Not to mention, it would be inequitable by state, by state, by state. Why are you in this job at all? If you don't have a dedication to the future of our children, why are you in this job?
Yeah, Linda McMahon didn't give a very good answer there. I'll give you a good example. It's because the Department of Education has failed. It has not helped our children. Our children are worse off. And there's nothing but evidence. All the evidence points that they would be better off if we got rid of the Department of Education. That's why I'm here. But sadly, one of the things I don't like about the big, beautiful bill is it doesn't cut the Department of Education completely. They cut some green energy subsidies, but it doesn't cut them completely. It does extend the tax cuts from 2017. But overall, I want to ask you, from what you've read, from what you've seen, you're a person who listens to talk radio, you're informed. Do you like this big, beautiful bill? A lot of people on Team Red seem to love it. A lot of people on Team Blue seem to hate it because it cuts too much. I feel like I'm on an island on my own because I don't like it because I don't think it cuts nearly enough. My next guest, E.J. Antoni from the Heritage Foundation, America's #1 conservative think tank out of Washington, D.C. Am I crazy or should we be expecting more? If you're fiscally conservative, this doesn't fit your principles in my view.
Oh, you don't have to be fiscally conservative, James. I mean, look at what the bond market did, for crying out loud. When they saw the text of this bill and figured out that it really wasn't cutting much spending at all. In fact, all it does is really slow the rate of increase in federal spending. The bond market just about revolted. You saw yields go through the roof. Essentially, what this is telling us is that the private market understands the federal deficit and the federal debt are on a completely unsustainable path, and eventually the government is not going to be able to pay back the money that it's borrowing. And so investors are demanding more and more in the way of interest payments to compensate for that. So, look, I think you're absolutely right. And again, you don't have to be some kind of fiscal hawk or fiscal conservative to realize that this is not enough.
Well, I hate having to come out here and knowing that there's a whole bunch of Trump supporters listening to WBAP. I got to tell you that I don't like this Trump bill. I don't want to be hated or whatnot, but I don't understand how Trump likes this bill. This doesn't even codify the spending cuts that he wants.
Exactly. Now, let's see what the Senate does to it, right? Maybe the Senate is going to make some serious improvements. That's always a possibility. The other thing that I'm wondering about, and I'm not sure why they're doing it quite in this order, but apparently the president's office, OMB, is also preparing what they call rescission packages. So this is basically a piece of legislation, essentially, that the president can send to Congress that's going to revoke or rescind previously authorized spending. Now, again, I'm not quite sure why they're not just putting that into the reconciliation process to begin with. Both operations only require simple majorities in Congress, so it's not like you need to worry about the filibuster, for example, in either case. But that apparently is in the works as well. So hopefully we get some additional cuts out of there. But again, I mean, it really is a shame that you have groups like the SALT Caucus who held up so many of the cuts because heaven forbid they don't get their big donor base to get another tax cut.
All right, we're talking with E.J. Antoni from the Heritage Foundation. I like to focus on the good parts of this. At least it extends the tax cuts from 2017.
Most of them, yeah. There's a couple things. Unfortunately, it does not extend very far. It just gives a short-term extension to. Business expensing is the number one thing, which is a shame because that's the most pro-growth part of the whole bill. What this essentially does is allow let's say you own a factory, it allows you to buy pieces of equipment, machinery, and to take the tax deduction for the whole thing instead of having to break it out over the course of 5 or even 10 or sometimes 20 years. Imagine if you're a small business and you have small margins, you can't afford to do that. And that's why oftentimes small businesses can't get into certain lines of work. They just can't compete with the big corporations. And actually, it's not just true for things like manufacturing, which the president is trying to bring back, by the way. It's also true for the tech industry, where if we look at 2022, when this went away, this full expensing, after that, 90% of the expenses that the tech industry had, they had to expense out over the course of several years. They couldn't take that deduction all at once. So that's another thing we really would love to see the Senate be made permanent. But sorry, I'm on a tangent here. Going back to what you wanted, James, which was
that was all good stuff.
Really like about the bill.
No, because I didn't know that level of nuance about the depreciation, expensing, whatever.
Yeah, and again, that's only temporary in the House version, so hopefully the Senate is going to make that permanent. But some of the other things we do really like, they do have some reforms to welfare programs in here. Again, I'm not saying it goes far enough, but there are some good reforms. For example, it's estimated that this is going to effectively kick over 1 million illegal aliens off of Medicaid. I think that's great. The Democrats say, "Oh, you're cutting Medicaid." No, we're preventing illegitimate beneficiaries from getting taxpayer money. And by the way, when we talk about a lot of these programs, especially things like Social Security that have trust funds attached to them, when you reduce illegitimate payments to illegitimate beneficiaries, then guess what? You are prolonging the solvency of those trust funds, and you are ensuring that legitimate beneficiaries will get legitimate payments for a longer period of time. Now, again, I think the Senate can improve upon this to put some more guardrails in there to ensure that people like pregnant women, essentially people who are on disability, can continue to get that Medicaid while getting off the folks that essentially the able-bodied adults who choose not to work. Those are not the kinds of people that we want on government assistance.
All right, E.J. Antoni from Heritage Foundation, how concerned are you about the budget effects? Because, these little policy changes, they're important here, but my real concern is that we have $36 trillion in debt, and this is going to not do anything to turn that bus around.
Exactly. Again, it does not reduce overall spending or the deficit or the debt. It just slows the rate of increase. The problem is that's not enough. We really need to stop the increase altogether. We need to get on a path to a balanced budget, and this does not do that. And the bond market is already telling us. I mean, I know you asked me for my opinion, but to be frank, I don't even think you need my opinion. The collective wisdom of the private market is already telling us it is not enough, and that we are on the wrong track, that we are on an unsustainable path.
Well, look, I know what you're talking about. Sorry to interrupt. I know what you're talking about. You know what you're talking about, but I don't think people who aren't financial wonks understand how the bond market puking yesterday was a sign of we're not taking our fiscal house seriously.
Well, let me try to throw some numbers at it, okay? If you consider how big the debt is and you consider how expensive it's getting to essentially just service the debt, meaning make the interest payments on it, we are fast approaching a point where it is going to take over $1.8 trillion a year, every year, just to pay the interest on the debt. That's not money to roads and bridges or hospitals or schools or the military or things like Social Security and Medicaid and Medicare. No, this is just the interest on the debt. In other words, more and more of your hard-earned tax dollars are literally going to go just to pay interest. A good chunk of, by the way, doesn't even stay here in the country. It's going to foreign bondholders.
All right, I got Fox Business on in the studio. Am I going to see you later?
Not today. I'll be on Kudlow tomorrow, though.
All right. Well, I'm a big fan. Thank you very much, E.J. Antoni, Heritage Foundation, breaking down the economic impact of the big, beautiful bill. Your thoughts? You probably have some opinions that hadn't been thrown out there yet. Let me hear from you. Big, beautiful bill. The next James Show listener meet and greet is going to be happening Tuesday, May 27th at Manny G's in Keller. Your phone knows where it's at. I'll be there from 7 to 9 p.m. Come on out, say hi, judge me based on my appearance, get a selfie, whatever. But the frustrating part about this bill is I feel like you're not being represented. If you're someone who wants government to be smaller or even stay the same size, you have no representation in D.C. or in Austin for that matter. You send Republicans to the House, the Senate, and the White House. Do you get a balanced budget? Do you even get a reduced annual deficit? You don't get a smaller government. And so what do? Could you vote for the Democrats? Oh, my God, no, they're even worse. They can't grow government fast enough. So if you think the government should be smaller and less powerful than it is, there is no party for you. There's Rand Paul, Thomas Massey, Mike Lee. On the state level, there's like Brian Harrison and maybe 4 guys in Austin. It's really just a small fringe subset of the GOP. And the rest of both parties is going to continue giving you a pay cut every year through taxes and inflation. They just don't care. And the same thing's happening to you in Austin right now. And what do you do about that? Stop supporting them. Primary these guys out. I don't know. It's 800-288-9227. Maybe someone has a better solution than me. Jason in McKinney, you're on WBAP. Your thoughts on the big, beautiful bill?
Yeah, it's definitely not a big, beautiful bill. I don't like it. There's a lot of components I don't like about it. Probably first and foremost, it's a budget bill, right? Am I correct in that?
Yeah.
Budget bill?
Kind of.
Okay, my point exactly. Even though I may agree with some of the extra stuff that's in there, we need to get to a point to where these bills need to be addressing what the bill is, right? I mean, all this extra crap that's in there, that slipped in there, that's not even budget related is beyond me. Just more and more pages to read through. But besides that, these mega junior accounts or whatever they're called, with kids get $1,000 or something like that, just automatically given to them from the government.
Oh yeah,
money. That makes me sick. No taxes on tips. Oh, I mean, my income's taxed. You know what's going on there, and it just explodes the debt. Doesn't help the deficit. It's just a bad bill all around. I'm glad there's things in it that I do like, unfortunately, that won't just stand alone, like the illegal immigrants getting kicked off government assistance. That's great.
Yay.
But, let that stand alone for a bill, and go through or whatever. But this doesn't help really much anything. It's bad all around. Few great things can be said about it, but it's just very upsetting.
Well, there's a small chunk of the WBAP audience that gives me grief for not being a Republican and saying I'm a libertarian. But this is why I don't understand how anybody who wants a limited government, who wants government to stop growing, can still support either party. You should be saying what I'm saying. The Republicans are better than the Democrats, but both of them have an unacceptable agenda for what they both envision the government to be just over the next 6 months. Jason?
Yeah. Well, I was saying this to somebody else, Democrat or Republican, our tax money's up for grabs. It just depends on, who's in power to get it. It's just not being very used wisely. And I'm 100% libertarian. I'm a fiscal conservative, though, but I'm a libertarian, and I just can't support the majority of this thing, whatever it is. So that's all I wanted to say.
I hear you. And just to illustrate how much worse Democrats are, thank you, Jason, in McKinney. This is Jimmy Kimmel. Now, this is supposed to be a comedy show, but he stops off to take some shots at the big, beautiful bill. And everything he criticizes about it, I love. And I think it doesn't go far enough. It's so frustrating.
This big, beautiful bill literally takes from the poor and gives to the rich, brazenly. Republicans like the Robin part, just not the hood. And Trump, the tariff of Nottingham, he probably doesn't even know what is in this bill. Because if he did, he would know he's slashing cancer research even more than he already has, which is by 31%. And the guy who puts McNibbles in his body and shellacks his own skin while he's out playing 48 holes of golf every weekend is the last person who should be cutting cancer research. It also will cut Medicaid. It will cut tax credits for climate-friendly energy sources. It jacks up taxes on universities. It eliminates a tax on gun silencers. It opens public land for drilling, mining, logging, and makes deep cuts to SNAP and food stamps for hungry people. And then these people go to church on Sunday and they say amen. It's really...
All right, so yeah, just run through all the things I like about the bill and then insult Christianity. You're not winning me over with that. Perry in McKinney, you're next up on WBAP. Your thoughts on the big, beautiful bill?
I'm not happy with the spending. We've definitely got a spending problem. And you mentioned about doing something about it. And the only thing I know I'd call it, say, an organization or a group that's just educating people on the facts of we the people. It's called tacticalcivics.com. Go check it out. If you want to know how to solve this problem, it starts at the county.
All right. That sounds like some solid advice. Thank you very much, Perry in McKinney. If you have any opinions on the big, beautiful bill, 800-288-9227, 800-288-9227. And for all you people who were concerned about like the Golden Dome discussion yesterday, well, I would do anything to keep this country safe and to keep it from collapsing. You know how empires collapse? By running up debt and not being able to handle their money. Did the Soviet Union collapse because it didn't have adequate missile defense, or was it a fiscal collapse? It couldn't pay its bills anymore. The Roman Empire, did it collapse because it got invaded by a bigger army, or it couldn't keep its fiscal house in order? The British Empire, the Spanish Empire, all these empires. How do empires collapse? Sometimes it's militarily, but far more often it's these fiscal issues. They get over their skis in debt, and when it gets to a point where they can't even service the debt anymore, boom, implosion, scatter, broken into the winds. And you saw it in your own lifetime. Again, how did the Soviet Union collapse? Was it missiles? Was it SDI? It was fiscal. It was these issues right here. And so if you're worried about the well-being for your country, military's fine. You can worry about that too. But this is going to be the more likely thing that takes down this country, far more so than any missile attack.